And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this special episode on the 27th day of December 2022. Well, it's raining right here in Brisbane at the moment, and it's 24 degrees, well below the average for around this time of the year. And I hope you all enjoying good time with your families and enjoying your holidays wherever you may be, enjoying this extra long weekend with all the festivities that are taking in place. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today we have a brief news update for you, and after that we have a bonus track today by Bondita Chakravarti. Stay around for that. It will be wonderful. The top news for today.
Manning Tsigas with the top stories on ABC News. The River Murray has reached levels in South Australia not seen in decades. With floodwaters peaking in Renmark, there's also been strife for low-lying communities further downstream, where homes have been swamped and roads washed away. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Meteorology says intense rainfall, which has led to road closures and flooding in the Northern Territory, is expected to continue over the coming days. Australians have been spending big at today's Boxing Day sales despite rising cost of living pressures. Data from the Australian Retail Association projects shoppers will spend a record $23.5 billion during the holiday period this year. While sales are expected to bounce back to pre-COVID levels, economists say the figure is likely a result of inflation, with fewer customers in store compared to previous sales periods. And at least 38 deaths have now been linked to a severe Arctic freeze that's continuing to affect the United States and Canada. Officials say 34 people have died across the US, with the worst hit area being the city of Buffalo in New York State. 4 fatalities occurred in Canada when a bus rolled over on an icy road in the western province of British Columbia. And those are the latest stories. For more, visit our website, abc.net.au/news. I'm Manning.
Thank you very much for that news update. Well, of course, Buffalo has been very hard hit with that, the cold storm, as I reckon. And it is very, very sad to see that so many people have lost their lives during that ordeal. And, of course, there are so many without the power. Just unimaginable from this side of the world. Well, right now, from the news, we heard that people are spending a lot more this time. Why is that so?
We've got the Retail Association predicting these strong sales for this time, $23 billion, an increase of 8%. That's what they say. Do you think that this increase in figure is a result of the inflation, or do you think that it's consumer spending from a quantity perspective that has increased?
Look, I think it's mostly inflation. It's also exaggerated a little bit because we're comparing to a year ago, and a year ago we were just coming out of the lockdowns, and so restrictions to some degree were still in place. You've also got to put in mind that most years we have record sales over Christmas and in the Boxing Day sales. That just reflects an expanding economy. $23 billion sounds like a lot of money, but it's a 2-point-something trillion economy. So in the great scheme of things, it's not that much. But the problem for retailers is that they get a big chunk of their spending through this time of year. Something like a quarter of holiday period spending occurs over this period, and they're also facing more difficult times. And as you were saying at the start there, inflation is playing a big role here. Prices are well up from where they were a year ago. So, yes, people are buying things, but they're not coming out with as many goods as before, but it's costing them more money.
And obviously, with this holiday spending, how much of an impact is this likely to be making on inflation? You'd expect that the retailers will be rubbing their hands about this time of year, because after this spending season, you'd expect those sales to drop off.
And they will drop off. The evidence we've got through the first part of the Christmas spending season, which runs from start to end of November, particularly through December, has been a bit mixed. It's sort of been okay, but not fantastic. If you look at the bank credit card transaction data and some other tracking indicators, it's okay, but it's not fantastic. Inflation is a big factor in there, but the bottom line is that the fundamentals for retailing are starting to deteriorate. We've got those very high interest rates. If you're someone with a mortgage of $500,000, your interest payments are up 10,000, 11,000 at an annual rate compared to where they were a year ago. So that's going to take a big chunk out of spending power. We've got the rise in the cost of living, which reduces the value of people's wages. And we've also got very low levels of consumer confidence. So all of those things point to a downturn or a slowdown in retail sales ahead, even though the headline numbers in terms of billions of dollars might sound quite solid through this Christmas New Year period.
Obviously, the RBA is on a mission to lower inflation, but there's still some spending impetus that are making their way through. When do you think this inflation figure is going to soften? Because that's really going to be the signpost for a decrease or a steadying even of interest rates.
That's right. That's critically important. Like, I think we're going to get some bad news first. The numbers for the December quarter or any monthly inflation number that comes out in the next few weeks, it's going to be pretty high. We're probably going to see inflation pushing up towards 8%. We know a lot of things have gone up in price already, but those numbers will also pick up the rise in energy costs, electricity costs in particular. Thereafter, I think inflation is going to start coming down. And as we go through the course of the year, it's going to head down quite a lot. Still be quite high, but well down from the 8% number. The US economy is leading in this. The US economy saw inflation pick up before Australia did. Their inflation rate has already fallen from about 9% down to 8%, down to 7%, sorry, and it's still slowing down. In fact, some numbers that came out on Friday continued to show a decline in inflation in the US. And I think we're going to see the same thing in Australia. As supply conditions return to something more normal, and of course, in particular, as demand slows down, that's going to mean less inflation, ultimately taking pressure off interest rates. So our feeling is that interest rates are either at or close to the top. We still may get one more hike, but then we'll see a pause through much of the year ahead of a rate cut, potentially at the end of the next year, or if not, then early in 2024.
Looking into your crystal ball again, you mentioned that the rates may either be steadied or increasing. What kind of increase could we be seeing at the next board meeting?
The good news is the Reserve Bank doesn't meet till February, so we get a month off. We don't have to hear about the Reserve Bank much through January. But I think come February, the evidence will be in that the economy is cooling off, that global inflationary pressures are easing, that there's a higher risk of global recession. So I think they'll either be in a position to leave interest rates on hold. They're currently at 3.1% for the cash rate. That's our base case, on hold, and leave them on hold for much of the year ahead of a cut later in the year, early 2024. Or alternatively, just do one more rate hike, taking us to 3.35%, and that's obviously the risk case here, that they go once more. But whatever it is, I think they have affected a big downturn in consumer confidence. People are feeling the pinch, particularly if you've got a mortgage, and that's going to slow things down a lot, and that will enable the Reserve Bank to pause either right where we are now or with just one more hike.
As we go into 2023, people who are paying more for goods, maybe at the supermarket or even just getting their coffee at the local cafe, those prices are unlikely to be coming down. Do you think that that's really going to hamper consumer confidence? Because obviously that consumer confidence element is such a strong cornerstone to the economy, isn't it?
It certainly is. You're right, completely right on that. Right now, consumer confidence is down around recessionary levels. It's pretty bleak. People feel the pinch here and the pain from all of this, and they're worried about the outlook, and that's understandable. Now, the unfortunate thing is those prices on average won't come down much. Some things may, but on average, you're still going to see high inflation. It's just going to come down from, say, an 8% rate down towards maybe 3.5%, 4%. So it's still going to be high, and I don't think those prices are going to come down much. So that damage will stay in the system. The good news, though, is that wages growth will probably pick up a little notch further, and therefore some of the cost of living pressures that have been so intense through this year, with wages growth around 3% and inflation up around 7 or 8%, some of that pressure will start to feel a bit less threatening as we go through next year. We're probably looking at wages growth around, say, 3.5%, maybe up towards 4%, inflation fairly similar. So at least people won't be going backwards through the year as a whole.
And hopefully, yes, that people won't be going backwards and that the interest rate might be put on hold as the next meeting of the Reserve Bank is in February. So we get a month off without biting our nails to say what it would be like. Well, right now, as we see that this is the holiday period, people like to go away, go overseas traditionally, but more and more Aussies are opting to travel locally.
Stretching kilometres over pristine rainforest canopy near Cairns, the Sky Rail lured visitors from around the world until COVID struck.
Pre-COVID, around 60% of our visitors were from overseas. Right now, only 10% of our visitors are from overseas.
An international tourism revival is the last piece of the puzzle for recovery in the far north. A return to normal is still a way off as travel confidence slowly rebuilds.
It'll really be the middle of 2023 when we start to see international pickup again.
For now, Australians are keeping businesses afloat. The Sunshine State shone this year.
What we're actually seeing is Queensland, for the first time ever, has actually surpassed New South Wales and Victoria. So we're now the #1 domestic tourism destination in Australia.
Outback Queensland, the Whitsundays, the Sunshine and Gold Coast were big performers.
Now we've really started to get the confidence back in travel, and the tourists have really started coming back in droves.
Labour shortages are still having a big impact. The latest data shows about 6,000 vacant positions in the state's tourism and hospitality sectors, forcing many businesses to reduce opening hours and trading days to cope.
And that's fueled by some of those international factors. So we don't have the international arrivals coming in, so we don't have those backpackers. We're working with the federal government on visa processing.
The Home Affairs Department says visa processing is a priority but takes time as we enter a 4th year of the pandemic. Kira Jones, ABC News.
Well, good to see that the local economy is supported by locals, so which is a very, very good thing to say, that you do need to have your holidays, but if you can holiday locally, why not? We've got so much to offer in this beautiful country, and there's so much that needs to be, discovered, seen. There's so much that people have not seen. And after the pandemic, when people have been started traveling locally, they've discovered many parts of Australia which they might not have thought of even. Well, right now, more deaths and severe conditions in America with that cold.
This Christmas season should have reunited families. But even this snowplow isn't going anywhere.
Anything can happen at any moment, and you got to be on your toes.
The Arctic freeze is hitting eastern parts of North America, from Canada to as far south as Texas. The freezing conditions are being caused by a bomb cyclone, bringing heavy snow and winds.
We are in a war. This is a war with Mother Nature. This will go down in history as the most devastating storm in Buffalo's history.
The city of Buffalo in New York State has been hit hardest, with a driving ban in place.
We know there are people who've been stuck in cars for more than 2 days, and there are people in homes that are below freezing now temperatures.
Homes across the US and in parts of Canada are without power, as residents struggle to stay warm.
I'm really glad that I have a fireplace, because otherwise I'd be freezing right now.
Temperatures of minus 50 degrees Celsius have been recorded, and close to 60% of the American population is under some sort of weather warning. Forecasters say the storm is expected to ease in the coming days, but the freezing temperatures are likely to remain. Angelique Liu, ABC News.
And a pretty bleak outlook out there. Look at those conditions, unimaginable from this side of the world. Very hard for us to imagine those kind of conditions there. That's extreme weather condition. Well, right now, our own extreme condition is the South Australia, and SES is confident that the river will rise to a record level.
At the Renmark gauges today, we're seeing that we think we've reached the peak. Obviously, that's going to take some time to make its way down the river, 2 to 3 weeks before that peak gets down to the far end around Wellington.
So at the moment, I imagine there's quite a few mitigating methods or things that have been used to hold those waters back. How are the levees holding up?
Mostly very well so far. Obviously, we've had a few issues with some of the levees, but almost without fail, we've been able to mitigate those, or local councils have been able to pull in their work staff and to remediate those levees. Sadly, one or two, particularly around caravan parks, we haven't been able to address those issues, and so there we've had to issue evacuation notices to make sure that people stay safe in those areas.
And just from a logistics perspective, obviously at this time of year, a lot of people travel, they go away for Christmas and the festive season. Do you have all that you need from a staffing perspective to help ensure the safety of people?
Yeah, look, absolutely we do. Our volunteers understand their role and their commitment to the community is just never ending. They've worked incredibly hard over the last few months to get us to this stage, and they're ready to respond if they're needed. We have an IMT in Loxton keeping really close eye on everything that's going on. We have crews regularly out monitoring those critical levees. So yeah, we're confident that we've got good intelligence coming in every day on this, and very hopeful now that this will proceed, obviously, without any major issues.
It must just be so difficult for people and yourselves at this time of year, given that it's supposed to be the festive season. Just on that, though, what is the mood like there among residents? Is it quite sombre, or is there a spirit of unity that everyone's getting on board to do their part?
Look, I think that spirit of unity is very much there. Nobody can deny we're in a sort of a watch and wait situation now. The planning is in place. Everybody's worked really hard to make sure that everything that we could do to mitigate the effects of these waters has been done. And now we just watch and we wait, and we ask the community to be obviously ready in case something goes wrong, but we really hope now that we've got everything in place to make sure that it doesn't.
It must really be taking its toll on everybody there, including yourselves. What's the advice, though, for people in the area?
Be aware. Be aware of your situation is the most important thing. As you know, we've got warnings out for the length of the river, and we ask that please people take time to read the wording of those warnings to understand what their risk is. Obviously, you know, the river, there's hundreds of kilometres of river. Each individual has to understand their own local knowledge, their own risk, take into account the warnings and the information that we're putting out regularly, and be realistic about their situation and the risk to their home and their family.
And expect that warning that, please keep an eye out if you are in those areas. And of course, always pay attention to the warnings. They are being put out for a reason. They're not there just to, get people in trouble, meaning that, to bother you, but they are there to keep you safe. And that's the whole reason for those warnings. Many times people get annoyed, but it is out there in the public safety. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, that this is the long weekend. It is the festive season, so people are out and about and away. So we have a very short segment today. Now for that bonus track that we promised. This is right here in our studios. So Aisha, Jaisha, and of course Bondita. Take it away, girls.
न मारेगी दीवानगी मेरी, न मारेगी आवारगी मेरी, के मारेगी ज्यादा मुझे मौत से नाराजगी तेरी। जिद किस बात की तेरी कि मारेगी ज्यादा मुझे मौत से नाराजगी तेरी जानिसार है जानिसार तेरे प्यार पे मेरे यार जानिसार है रिश्ते मिटाए हैं तुझसे ही यारी है हमारी एक बार तो हो मैंने निभाया है करके दिखाया है ले तेरी बारी एक बारी तू भी प्यार निभा तू भी प्यार निभाओ यारा सी है बड़ी उम्र इंतजार की मेरी कि मारेगी ज्यादा मुझे मौत से नाराजगी तेरी क्यों इतना हुआ है तू खफा है जिद किस बात की तेरी कि मारेगी ज्यादा मुझे मौत से नाराजगी तेरी जानिसार है जानिसार तेरे प्यार पे मेरे यार जानिसार है जानिसार तेरे प्यार पे मेरे
Oh, beautiful day, wonderful. Thank you very much, Bondita, Aisha and Jaisa as well, right here in the studios of Australian Indian Radio. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to wish you all the best of what's left of today, and of course, wherever you are, enjoying your holidays. I know many offices will be closed until next week. Enjoy. But always take care, make sure that you take the necessary precautions, and if you're drinking, never ever get behind those wheels. Remember, it is not the one, in a party, it is not the one who has had the least to drink, but the one who had nothing to drink, who should be the nominated driver. Well, ladies and gentlemen, until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us. And we don't have the daily India reports coming in at the moment. Our Delhi team are on break as well. So as soon as we start those segments, we will let you know. And also our regular radio programs have been disrupted because many of our specialist presenters are on holidays as well. So it is running on a different time planning. Some of the ones are still on those times, but please do check our timetable and do tune in because there are some beautiful holiday programs that have been put together by the Australian Indian team. Well, until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us.